Hello. In this video, I wanted to touch on the concepts of abundant living and what it means for you to find abundance of yourself within. And the idea of abundance on our earthly plane always sits at some sort of limiting factor of self because we always perceive it and we always look at it from the standpoint of a dualistic expression, meaning abundance meaning having, and being unabundant meaning not. And so from that standpoint, by the mere nature that we are taking the concept that exists at the core of our being, and then we're propagating that concept into our dualistic split mind, and then interpreting the concept of the greater whole in our split mind, creates scarcity. It creates this innate understanding and innate design with a mere nature that within ourselves there's something that is not enough, there's something that is lesser than, or there's something that is simply could be more but is not, and then you name it whatever the decision or the definition you want to place of why, right? And so the concept, all concepts, but in this particular case, abundance, um, exists and functions in this higher dimensional place where the ideas of lack or the ideas of more, basically the duality that we have come to know and love so much, do not exist, right? So there's not a question whether or not you will have everything you will ever want, um, because there's no concept of not having everything that you've ever wanted. Uh, and so to change our perception, right? To change our limited thinking, um, we don't necessarily have to rearrange our brain waves to start thinking, oh well, why am I not abundant, or why am I, not whole, or why do I not have enough of this or enough of that, or why am I feeling lesser than, right? Both from the physical three-dimensional standpoint, if you want to look at it monetarily, materialistically, but then also as a human being, right? Like, why am I not enough, right? So like that's abundance of self beyond the material and beyond the three-dimensional, beyond monetary. When we start looking at our being at its pure form of frequency, our existence is a pure form of frequency, our interpretation into this world is a pure form of frequency, um gain this cognitive knowledge, right? Gain this understanding that abundance, pure ecstasy of vibrant living, exists higher than the split of duality that we have come to understand it and interpret it as its truth. And so to start rewiring or reinterpreting that belief, you simply have to raise your idea, raise your vibrational cognitive understanding of this concept into a plane outside of duality. And so I'm not saying sit there and actively go, oh, duality does not exist and blah 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 blah. There's no human functionality, a concept where you can take, there's no road you can travel, right? In order to start unraveling the dualistic aspects of you or the dualistic aspects of abundance. Where you would go is you would connect to your higher being and you would connect to your higher self, connect to the higher essence of truth, where there is no concept outside of abundance. The abundance is the concept itself. And so, in that understanding, in that propagation of your life, you can choose every day, day to day, like minute by minute, start to live or start to interpret your existence in the concept where you are everything, you represent everything. you're a whole, you're a part of the whole, you are in fact the whole. And then therefore, within that wholeness, the only concept of self that can possibly exist is the concept of pure abundance, pure joy, pure love, and then pure ongoing state of satisfaction where nothing is ever in lack, because the does not lack is not a thing. And in that understanding and that perception, you can start to change or truly perceive the whole. And then, and this is kind of the nuance that is very important to insert, or very important to understand, is as you start to function in this field where abundance is the isness, and your pure joy, your pure body is the wholeness. From that point on, you can start to zero in and narrow down and see what it means to insert that concept back into all aspects of your three-dimensional living. So I'm not saying insert that concept back into the duality of things. What I'm saying is insert that concept of oneness, of wholeness, of pure abundance, of the isness as your three-dimensional interpretation. So one, it is going up high to relate and to understand and to truly feel what it means to have the possibility of the whole or be the whole. And then, so that is a step within itself. It's this expansion of your being from its core, from its heart center. And then two, then being able to hold that energy. And when you get comfortable enough holding that energy, taking that energy interpretation, and then being able to marry it back into the three-dimensional interpretation of yourself. Now, again, not going back into the splits, not going back into the functionality of you and the old ways of thinking and the old ways of doing, still keeping this higher overarching concept of self, and then inserting the wholeness into the familiarity, but not let the familiarity override the wholeness, right? And so there's this marrying of fields. You're actively taking the field of infinite possibilities where infinite potential exists, because the infinite potential is the isness. It is the you, right? You are the infinite potential. And then you're taking the interpretation of this infinite potential and then bringing it, kind of coiling it into the three-dimensional interpretation of you. And so then the nuance, the difference is your three-dimensional interpretation only then starts to exist and start to function as the isness of the whole. Then you are literally, if you imagine the whole as this possibility, the endless light, right? And then you exist as that whole, right? But because you came here to have an experience and you came here to represent yourself in this nuance, in this three-dimensional form, in this particular representation of you, then what you are then doing is you're recognizing that you are the whole, and then your choice into this coming, your choice into this form and into this body is to have this three-dimensional flow. I see it as a river flowing out of the ocean. The river flows into ocean. So the kind of the concept is ever evolving, right? The current of you is flowing out of the divine, the field, whatever you want to call it, the field that is you of the infinite potential, the wholeness, right? The abundant isness. And then it's overriding and overtaking the three-dimensional limiting interpretation of else, right? That might be stemming from this direction, right? And it's actually propagating itself down, right? And then you're almost erasing the untruth, and you're erasing the inequality that you have created within your life. And so our interpretation here, when it functions in duality, creates a lot of inequality. And then inequality could be interpreted in a multitude of forms. Um, but your splitting of the concepts, your dualistic interpretation, um, takes your essence, the essence of you as light, and this, this frequency of the wholeness, and it distorts it. It distorts in the space of the split. And so the goal, of you coming here is to unify that split, not by fighting it, not by erasing it, not by trying to reinterpret it as something else, by simply seeing that the beauty of it and the necessity of it, that you have participated thus far, and then realizing this is a choice of self to go into the higher interpretation, right? This is a choice to be here in the dualistic expression, and it's a choice to be here in the high expression of your being. And once you make this choice, then you can take this choice and then propagate it back down, to override your dualistic expression. Now, the dualistic expression can then function around you, and it can exist around you. But again, I will bring in the theatrical type of expression, um, to where you are playing with the concept as opposed to being the concept. And that's a primary difference, is you're sitting in the concept and it's supposed to marrying that and being that and believing that to be a truth. You're simply going, here's me, and I can use this as my playground for the concepts. But the key is you're still bringing the unified version of you back down and functioning with that as your truth. You're anchoring that in as your truth. And then how you decide to interpret that truth, um, is up to you. But you're sitting in the unified form of you. And so abundance on this plane, on this three-dimensional interpretation of you, comes from this higher understanding of the higher realms, of the isness, of the life that is. And the life that is has pure form of abundance in it. Unlimited form, unlimited expression, unlimited interpretation, unlimited essence of you. And then through that understanding, you can bring that forward. Bring that down or forward, I guess. We're in a non-linear time and space, but however you want to interpret it. And then, so the lineification, the linear expression of your being, does not have to hold duality. Or you would actually, no, I'm sorry, you would interpret the expression of you being in a non-linear form. And then therefore in that form, it can function without holding duality. So that is kind of the clarification there. I misspoke. And so that is the override. The override can only come from that place. And so that place, I will say, takes work, but that is not true. That place simply takes acknowledgement and opening to yourself, opening to your heart center, and then living from that heart center through and through, right? Listening to your intuition, following your own voice, your internal calling, the calling of your higher being. I say your calling, but it is in fact you. You're calling yourself into this place. And so living from that space, and then being able to just kind of rise naturally, as the waves, of that rise take you into conscious understanding, the pure consciousness, the universal mind, the oneness, the unity, the source, whatever you want to call it, where you are seeing yourself as the unified being, and separate. I say seeing, but in fact feeling, right? That feeling of unity and separateness is what what makes everything, crystal clear. And only through the gaining of that clarity, not the concept of hearing it, but the gaining of that clarity within, like you're within your vibrational field, then you can feel it as a whole, and then be able to propagate it down into the light ray of you. into this form. And you have always been propagating it, um, but without conscious awareness. But so this interpretation or this new version of you is designed to where you can propagate this in the conscious awareness of your form, which is kind of like the ultimate magic, that you get to still play here in this playground, but now in this option of the greater whole or the greater knowledge. And so like the game changes, interpretation of you changes, and then you see the beauty and then every single nuance of the world whenever you bring this back down, because you know you're already feeling the whole, and then now you are a reflection of the whole on this plane. And you see the amount of love that you can allow it to flow through you, uh, and the amount of beauty that exists in every single interpretation of the divine, whether the divine still chooses to function in the forms of duality, or whether that divine chooses to propagate pure consciousness. Um, and so the awareness, the choice and awareness carries beauty. And it is a beautiful place to be. Lacking words here, but I can feel it. But so I hope it comes through. It's a beautiful place to live. So I hope you find yourself there if that is the road that you're meant to travel. But just follow your heart, and then everything will be as is. Thank you.